this section, we will look at the endocrine system, structure and function. The endocrine gland is the major player in the system. The endocrine system is made up of the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, adrenal glands, thyroid gland, parathyroid glands, pancreas, and gonads. The primary function of these ductless glands is to secrete their hormones directly into the surrounding fluid. When we look at the endocrine system, we also have other glands that are noted, which is the pineal gland. And we also will see the placenta, which is noted during pregnancy. Some of these glands have both endocrine and non-endocrine functions. So, for example, the pancreas contains the function in the digestion as well as cells that secretes hormones in insulin and glycogen, which regulate the blood glucose levels. The hypothalamus, thymus, heart, kidneys, stomach, small intestines, liver, skin, ovaries, and testes are other organs that contain cells with the endocrine function. The hypothalamus pituitary complex is the command center. This complex secretes several hormones that directly produces responses in target tissues, as well as hormones that regulate the synthesis and secretion of hormones of other glands. This combination in this unit helps exert control over the function of several endocrine glands like the thyroid, adrenals, gonads, as well as a wide range of psychological activities. So let's now take a closer look at the hypothalamus pituitary complex. As you see in this diagram, you see that the pituitary gland is divided into the posterior pituitary hormones and the anterior pituitary hormones. The posterior pituitary hormones does not produce hormones, but they rather stores and secrete hormones produced by the hypothalamus. So when we're looking at the top, you see that the releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, you have the antidiuretic hormone. The antidiuretic hormone is stored in the pituitary gland, and it targets the kidneys, sweat glands, circulatory system, and the overall effect, it balances water in our system. Another hormone that is stored in the pituitary gland is called oxytocin. Oxytocin targets the female reproductive system, and it is used during the triggering of uterine contractions during childbirth. As we recall, the posterior pituitary does not synthesize hormones. They just store them, right? But the anterior pituitary does manufacture hormones. The secretion of the hormones from the anterior pituitary gland can be regulated by two classes of hormones. These hormones are secreted by the hypothalamus. They're the releasing hormone that stimulates the secretion of hormones from the anterior pituitary, or the inhibiting hormones that inhibit the secretions. The anterior pituitary produces 7 hormones. These are the growth hormones, thyroid stimulating hormones, adrenocorticotropic hormones, follicle stimulating hormones, luteinizing hormone, beta endorphin, which we're not going to discuss in this lecture, and prolactin. We can think of the hormones of the pituitary gland, TSH, ACTH, FSH, and LH, as trophic hormones. Trophic means turning, because they turn things on or off the function of other endocrine glands. So let's dive a little deeper looking into the anterior pituitary hormones. So let's look at the gonadotrophic releasing hormone, released by the hypothalamus, and it produces the luteinizing hormone, which affects the reproductive system, and it stimulates production of sex hormones by the gonads. Again, let's look again at the gonadotrophic releasing hormone. Target, follicular or follicle stimulating hormone. Target is the reproductive system, and it stimulates production of sperm and eggs. Then we have the thyroid releasing hormone. This again is released from the hypothalamus. It targets the thyroid stimulating hormone in the pituitary gland. The target organ or gland here is the thyroid gland. It stimulates the release of thyroid hormones, which help regulate metabolism. We have the prolactin releasing hormone. The opposite of that, the inhibitor, is the prolactin inhibiting hormone. Target organ here is prolactin. It targets the mammary glands and it promotes milk production. Then we have the growth releasing hormone, and the opposite is the growth inhibiting hormone. Targeted is the growth hormone in the pituitary gland. The target organs here is liver, bones, and muscles. So it induces targets like producing insulin-like growth hormones and helps stimulate body growth and a higher metabolic rate. Then we have a cortisol's releasing hormone. The target in the pituitary hormone is the adrenocorticotropic hormone. Target organs, adrenal glands, and induces targets to produce glucocorticoids, which regulates metabolism and stress response. Let's take another in-depth look at the specific glands. So we have the adrenal glands. There are two that adhere to the top of the kidneys, and the adrenal glands can be broken down into the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. When we're looking at the adrenal cortex, we know that the associated hormones here is aldosterone, cortisols, corticosteroids, and cortisones. The aldosterone is a major mineralocorticoid which regulates the concentration of sodium and potassium ions in urine, sweat, and saliva. It helps release in response to elevated blood potassium, low blood sodium, low blood pressure, or low blood volume. Aldosterone increases excretion of potassium and the retention of sodium, which in turn increases blood volume and blood pressure. When we look at the adrenal cortex, it releases cortisols. So like a steroid, it increases blood glucose levels. Then we have the adrenal medulla. The associated hormones here is your epinephrine and non-epinephrine. This is controlled by a neural pathway that originates from the hypothalamus in response to the danger or stress. Remember that fight or flight. So it signals the liver and skeletal muscle cells to convert glycogen into glucose to increase blood glucose levels. These hormones help with increased heart rate, pulse, and blood pressure in the preparation of the body to fight the perceived threat or flee from it. So remember that again, fight or flight response. Let's take a diver look at thyroid gland. We know it's located anterior to the trachea, and the thyroid hormone production is dependent on the hormone's essential iodine. The thyroid gland produces T3 and T4, and these both are regulated by the thyroid stimulating hormone. The release of T3 and T4 from the thyroid gland is regulated by the thyroid stimulating hormone, which is located in the anterior pituitary gland, and low blood levels of T3 and T4, which stimulates the release of thyrotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, which triggers secretion of TSH from the anterior pituitary. In turn, the TSH stimulates the thyroid gland to secrete T3 and T4. So the levels of TRH, TSH, T3, and T4 are regulated by a negative feedback system in which increases levels of T3 and T4 decreases the production and secretion of TSH. The thyroid gland also secretes a hormone called calcitonin, which is also called C cells. Calcitonin is released in response to a rise in blood calcium levels. Most people have 4 parathyroid glands. but occasionally there are more in tissues of the neck or the chest area. The parathyroid glands produce and secrete parathyroid hormone, a peptide hormone, in response to low blood calcium levels. You will recall that we discussed the pancreas has two functions, the digestive section and then the endocrine section. Here we'll look at the endocrine section. The pancreas is a long, slender organ, most of which is located posterior to the bottom half of the stomach. And the pancreas has functions like the alpha cells would produce hormone glucagon, which increases blood glucose levels. Beta cells, which produces hormone insulin, which reduces blood glucose levels. Delta cells, which produces somatostatin, which inhibits insulin and glycogen release. And then PP cells, which releases the pancreatic polypeptide hormone, which helps in the role of the appetite. We also have the gonadal hormones. The hormone roles of the gonadals are the testes and ovaries, which produces sex cells, sperm, and ova, and secretes the gonadal hormones. The primary hormone produced by the testes is testosterone, and the primary hormones produced by the ovaries are estrogen. And then during the initial stages of pregnancy, an organ called the placenta develops within the uterus, which promotes progesterone synthesis during pregnancy and inhibits immune response against the fetus. So in a gist, endocrine system is made up of glands that make hormones. It coordinates metabolism, growth, development, control emotions, mood, sexual function, and sleep. We will now proceed on to the next modules where we'll discuss hypothyroidism and diabetes mellitus.